We're now entering the final section of today's program. We saved the best for last. Our next speaker is a true architectural icon, a fellow member of the New York Five, and a close friend to Michael Graves. To provide a perspective that only he could share, it is my distinct honor to welcome to the podium Richard Meier.
Thank you. I first met Michael in 1972. We were introduced by a mutual friend of ours named Myrna Mushkin, who was working with Michael in the office of George Nelson. At that time, I was working in the office of Marcel Breuer. Michael and I became friends, and we decided to do a competition together. We didn't win, but this collaboration established our friendship. And since Michael was also painting in his spare time, we decided to share a studio together on 10th Street in the summer of 1962. We rented space from a painter, Philip Perlstein, on East 10th Street. And at that time, 10th Street, between 3rd and 4th Avenue, was in some ways the center of the art world in New York. William de Kooning had a studio 2 doors away. And one day, Mr. de Kooning poked his head into our room. He took one look at the work, turned around and walked out. Presumably in total disgust. But this visit sent me thinking. I looked at what I was doing, which were very large red, white, and blue abstract expressionist canvases. And I looked at what Michael was doing, which were small, almost black paintings done with a palette knife. And I realized that at least I couldn't possibly succeed as a painter. I decided to concentrate on architecture. I stopped making large paintings, but Michael didn't. Michael kept painting and continued throughout his life to do amazing work. Michael was not only a talented architect and a good teacher, but a superb painter, and he loved making objects, as you've seen. He took joy in all facets of his life. Perhaps for some, he's in the public eye for the many objects which he designed, which is unusual for an architect to be known for his objects as well as for his architecture. But Michael did everything. He did a lot of projects like the one in North Dakota, which were never realized. Like all of us, he did a lot of work on things that never really reached fruition. But that didn't matter. His work is just superb. I'll never forget when we taught together here at Princeton. We had very gifted students at the time, Todd Williams, Henry Smith Miller, among others. And since that time, we shared a lifelong friendship for 55 years. He'll sorely be missed by me, as I know he will by all of you. Thank you.
Our final speaker has a 55-year-long history with Michael. They not only taught together at Princeton in the early 60s, but they actually helped to shape the School of Architecture in their shared vision for architectural education. As young professors, they convinced the president of Princeton University to give them a $100,000 grant. That's a lot of money then, which they turned into the famous Jersey Corridor project. It was featured on the cover of Life magazine. Michael Graves and Peter Eisenman were close friends, and for anyone who ever saw them share a stage, their collective history and often hilarious personal banter were a joy to behold. Please welcome Peter Eisenman.
Well, after 2.5 hours, everything I thought I wanted to say has been said. And all of you who know me, I'm very rarely at a loss for words. So I'll just say what I was going to say anyway. Michael Graves, for all of us, and especially for those of us who knew him well, was a hero. He lived a heroic life. And let me tell you why I think today it's more important than ever. It's a time when star architects, in quotes, are denigrated openly and derisively, and not only in the media, but also absurdly in the profession. To be called a hero for me today is to receive a badge of courage. Every discipline needs heroes: film, sport, literature, music, science, even architecture. When I was a student, I needed heroes to learn from. And today, my students also need heroes. Often heroes are lonely figures who challenged accepted norms of behavior by what they say and what they do. Think of Frank Lloyd Wright, or Louis Kahn, or Michael. Oh, is this gonna work? There, we got it. Michael began his architectural life as a modernist. His early career was at Cincinnati, then Harvard, where I first met him in 1959. What was not said, by the way, in anybody today was he played center on the Broad Ripple High School football team in 1951. Important formation, I believe. We met, as I said, in '59, and also when he was at the American Academy in Rome in '60, before coming to Princeton. And I joined him at Princeton in 1963. At that time, he was the whitest of the so-called whites of modern architects. He even drove my then wife to tears shopping for all-white baby clothes. The telltale bourgeois markings of bunnies and ducks and chickens were not allowed. At Princeton, we spent many a long evening drawing on the same boards for competitions. I on the plans and he drawing upside down on the elevations. The day Le Corbusier died, we stayed up all night with 2 students to mount each page of the 6 volumes of the Œuvre Complète on the walls of the school gallery, over which we laid 2 giant X's of black crepe. Michael was such a Corbusian at the time that he even changed his signature to that similar to Le Corbusier. At that time, we were so close that a philosophy professor, Arthur Zathmary, many of you will remember him, who was standing on McCosh Walk outside of the School of Architecture, was heard asking, "Who is this person, Eisenman Graves," with a hyphen? Probably What was most unusual, as Linda said, was our direct and unique access as junior professors to the president's office. The president personally raised over $1,000, $1 million by today's counting, for our Jersey Corridor project. Together, Michael and I also started the Case Group of Architects, which later led to the book Five Architects, that Paul Goldberger, here with us today, delivered into history as the New York Five. If there was a straight-line modernist, albeit with a flair, it was Michael. Witness his Benaceref, Hanselman, and Schneiderman houses. But then suddenly, only a few years later, after Five Architects, something radically new appeared. His Fargo Moorhead Cultural Center Bridge of 1977. This was no ordinary postmodernism in the sense that the term was being used by architects and critics of the day. I don't think it was ever a postmodernism. This was a new originality of precedent, honed perhaps by the authority of the modern. Always an accomplished painter, Michael's unique amalgam of art and architecture allowed him to imagine a project in which arches have no keystones and a column is made of falling water. In 1980, after winning the Portland building competition and with the success of the Venice Biennale Strada Novissima exhibition, Michael was top dog, king of the hill, numero uno on the world stage. Later, however, during the 3-year struggle to approve his brilliant and eccentric diptych proposed for the Whitney Museum expansion from 1985 to 1988, Michael's hegemony began to erode, just as the postmodernist itself began to erode. Personally, I think losing the Whitney took a lot out of him. Michael was no longer on architecture's center stage. Yet, importantly, he persisted in his own way to turn out more design, big and small, than any architect of our generation, just as he would do again following his debilitating illness in 2003. Michael, a lifelong teacher, couldn't abide students who didn't take their work seriously, but he was especially generous with them. And unlike most other teachers, he could draw every building he would teach them. And that's something that no other, I think, architect that I've ever seen could do. He was then a consummate talent, an artist architect, and a teacher who challenged how we think by how we see. Very few can do that. Very few ever try. Michael did try, and therein is the mark of a hero, a master of the discipline who passed on from himself everything he knew. A few weeks ago, Michael sat with us at the architecture jury for the American Academy of Arts and Letters, being ornery as only such a jury could provoke him to be. And then, only a few days later, poof, he was gone. However he might be seen from the outside as free from the label of the Five, he remained and remains one of us, an architect to the end. Thank you.